Hello everyone, welcome to this event, this live stream in the context of the Beethoven Complete Keyboard Works. This concert indeed is part of the Kickstarter that we launched last year with the first volume of Beethoven's Keyboard Works that Alberto played in 9 CDs, and we announced a live concert in the framework of that, and that's going to be taking place today. So Kickstarter is a platform that allows us to launch recordings, to make recordings without having to pre-finance them. And actually our Beethoven box, so to say, the yellow box that you'll have, is number 5 on Kickstarter. So we're very proud of that chain, of that series of recordings that we are producing right now. We started before Kickstarter even with the Pachelbel Hexachordum Apollinis. We released that on CD and vinyl disc. And then we went to Kickstarter first with our Beethoven 5th Symphony, remember that? Also both on CD and vinyl disc. And then we moved on with Bach, the Wohltemperiertes Klavier, so the well-tempered clavier. We recorded on clavichord, or I recorded that. Was released on Kickstarter after that with an organ production, also on CD and vinyl disc. And then of course we had our main achievement until then was the box with 9 symphonies and 10 CDs, symphonies by Beethoven, played 4 hands piano here at this piano by Alberto and myself. And this is number 5. And actually number 6, Chopin, 5 CDs in 1 box, is on its way. The production is actually sent out today, so everything is finished. And that will be finished at the end of the summer, August, beginning of September. So Kickstarter allows us to do all of that. And of course, that's only possible thanks to your support. For this production, the Beethoven Keyboard Works first volume, we had no less than 150 people supporting that, backing that, and so making this possible, and more than possible. Actually, it was the upstep for the box number 2. And this live concert was a part of the Kickstarter of the highest tier level and was made possible by 7 people who backed that. Dan, Saad, John, Stefano, James, Stefan, if I pronounce his name correctly, and Dimitris. So they made sure that you tonight will enjoy a beautiful concert with music by Beethoven played by a very gifted pianist. So our plans for next year, after this, is obviously the second book of the Wohltemperiertes Klavier is already recorded, as many of you know. That will be released in September, and then in December, box number 2. So volume Keyboard Works by Beethoven, volume number 2, will also be released on Kickstarter. And then next year, we will have several projects. Obviously, Alberto will be working on box number 3, that will be released in December 26, so that by the time we enter the magical year 27, which is a celebration year for Beethoven, we have all the symphonies and all the keyboard works played in whole beat. That's actually very cool. Something that we could not have dreamed of doing years ago. But thanks to you, all of that becomes possible. Then also we will be thinking of the restoration of that beautiful play pianino that we have here. It's a little instrument from 1838. It's the same year as where Chopin composed his preludes on in Mallorca. It's the same series, those pianos. The one that he used for composing the preludes, and this that we have might just have been sister instruments, we don't know. But that needs restoration, might be also an idea for a Kickstarter. Then Alberto, as I said, will be working on the Beethoven box number 3 with all the great big sonatas, the later sonatas, the Diabelli variations. And I will be working on the Mozart Keyboard Works. That will be a kind of sister project to the Beethoven works, but then on clavichord. Also Bach, of course, is not off the table with the partitas. They will come maybe already in 26, we have to see about that. And there is also a new plan of the Mendelssohn organ sonatas and then the 3 preludes and fugues on organ. So a lot of things that we actually plan to do, but again, it's all possible thanks to you. So now back to this concert. Alberto is going to introduce the program. Obviously, every word that we play is according to whole beat. That's the practice in which we take 2 takes for 1, as you know. And yeah, that's quite unique. This might be the first concert, a live concert, well, that has whole beat music actually in this way played. So it's kind of unique moment, it's kind of milestone. So before I give the word to Alberto, a few practical points. You will not be able to activate your sound for obvious reasons, because then you enter the live stream. And also the video is not activatable. I don't know if that's an English word, but you know what I mean, for obvious reasons as well. There will be a Q&A at the end of the live stream, so if Alberto is finished with his pieces, then we will take a moment to go through your questions or read your suggestions or comments. Anya will be taking notes of those, and she will be bringing that on a piece of paper to us at the end of the live stream. Stefan, as you have seen, probably is the host of this meeting, so he's also moderating the chat. Then the audio, we will record the audio through the microphone that's connected to the camera, which is fine. We checked all of that. And we will be recording the audio of the piano separately with our main microphones on the studio tape recorder. So when the live stream is over, we will have the footage of the concert by Zoom and also by this camera, but I will edit, or I will replace the sound of the live stream with the recorded sound of the studio tape recorder. That will be much better, and I will be sending that recording to all of you in the coming days or next weeks. So one thing I should not forget to mention before I have the final point, one of our plans, of course, I would forget that, and we just had a 1-week seminar on our book, Fixing the Beethoven Mistake. That manuscript is like reaching its final point. It's here. I know many of you are waiting for that. So it's 400 pages of manuscript. It's not completely ready, but let's say 95% is already ready. We had 4 days really intense with Lorenz and with Arthur together going through that entire manuscript. So that's also one of the plans of 2026, obviously. So as a final point, Alberto will be checking the tempo before he plays every movement. That's not a habit that we develop and will be doing our entire life. But in the framework of the release of the first Beethoven Keyboard Works Volume 1, I thought it's important because tempo is important. Changing tempo changes everything. And while Alberto is of course very much capable of remembering a tempo and playing a piece of music in the correct tempo or the about correct tempo, it's yet important to demonstrate that the correct tempo is actually very important. And it's not me who's saying that. The book also will have a lot of quotes that actually talk about that. Contemporary persons, composers, musicians of Beethoven. For instance, Carl Czerny famously said, changing the tempo even a little bit, and I'm quoting freely, changes the entire nature of the piece. Actually, he says, destroys the entire piece. And so he says the only way to be truthful to the intention of the composers actually honor his tempo, and therefore Alberto will be making sure that he plays according to the exact tempo. Might be even a nice idea when we would later eventually be able to do this, replicate this on a stage, maybe with the symphonies, that we have a real metronome and actually checking the tempo before that, before we play. So that you do not think that he's cheating or he's doing something weird. He wants to make sure that you get the music of Beethoven in the tempo that Czerny indicated. Finally, I might be running a few times through the camera. I will be page turning for Alberto, and I will be standing over here. You won't see me unless I'm turning the pages, but sometimes I might need to check the camera or the tape recorder, and so you might see me running through the image, but I'm sure you don't mind. It's a little bit of an informal setting. So without further ado, let's call for the real star of this evening, which is Beethoven. Well, I cannot call for him because he won't reply my calls, but as a surrogate, as a replacement, I would say we have our own Alberto Sanna. So I'm happy to give the word to him. Enjoy your evening.
Hello everyone, thank you for being there. So as Wim was telling, I will be introducing the program. So the program of tonight actually reflects what you have seen in the first CD box, which is a mix of the sonatas, so the repertoire that most of us know today about Beethoven, but the idea at the base of this project is of course to mix it with the variations, which are represent in a way a huge part of the piano output that Beethoven wrote in his life, but today is very much overlooked. So the idea was, of course, to mix known pieces with less known, and also show a different side of this composer. So the program of today will open with the variations on La Sesta Stessissima from the opera Falstaff by Antonio Salieri. And he will continue with the Sonata Opus 2 number 3 in C major, the very well known by Beethoven. So these two pieces are among the most important pieces of the first box. Just to remind to everyone, the first box has a lot of we go to chronological order, so we have many pieces written still during Beethoven's youth, early days in Vienna, so at the end of 18th century, and so it's the case also for these two pieces, which in a way also pay tribute to two of his teachers when he was young in Vienna, which are Haydn. So the sonata is in a set of 3 sonatas dedicated to Joseph Haydn, who was Beethoven's teacher, but also, not many will know, but Beethoven studied composition also with Antonio Salieri. So in a way these two pieces come together well. And also the variations of course represent more the playful side of Beethoven's, and it's also a musical form that he kept working on throughout his entire life, so from the first days until the Diabelli variation, of course. And then of course we have the sonata, so the big piece, which has already the big contrast, hinting a little bit to the revolutionary Beethoven that we see later in the latest sonatas, but also still very well rooted in the 18th century tradition, and with a lot of youthful energy. So without further ado, I wish you a nice listening and enjoy the music.
Congratulations, Alberto.
Yeah.
So Well, Anya is taking the notes and
Yeah,
then
Anya.
going to print. I'll take a chair and then I'll have a chat with you. So
Let's.
don't move.
Don't move. Okay. Rest in the frame always. Yeah.
Let there be a little light.
Maybe everyone is gone by now. Like nobody's anymore in the chat.
It's not so light, but anyways. So congratulations. How do you feel?
Good.
Good?
Yeah.
Not tired at all?
No.
Okay, then we play another sonata.
We can do it.
A clavier sonata, perhaps.
But it was the first time. Thank you, Anya.
There is Anya and there
Do we
is...
have questions?
We have questions.
And we have a dog.
Yeah, he wants to say hi too.
Hello, Shibo.
Ah.
Hello, Shibo. Yeah.
Questions for you.
I'll read the questions and I'll ask.
For you. Hey.
First of all, I would want to have a little chat with you because I see, watching you play, you are living in Brussels now, playing basically on a modern piano. And so you arrive here in the afternoon and you play a little bit and you adapt to the piano really quickly. Isn't that very difficult? Because you might want to explain, or the people might want to know, like, a fortepiano and a modern piano is like two different instruments.
Yeah, it's two different worlds, and the main thing is, of course, the lack of the aftertouch and the lightness of the key. Actually, they, on the contrary of what people think, they actually prevent you from playing faster or like in a relaxed way, because like your fingers can never like lay on the key, like if you press a little bit and then you need that key later, it's not gonna sound. So like you should always be careful, like, and the way you keep your hands, and also the size of the keys definitely makes everything more difficult. Like you have to be always very careful to where you position your hand, like the margin of error is of course smaller on this instrument.
Yeah. And using so little pedal doesn't help either.
Yeah, of course you are, in that regard it's because you are always exposed, so any like little mistake you hear that immediately. And of course the lack of pedal, like if you don't use the pedal you cannot leave the key before you release it in the proper way.
Yeah,
so
yeah, you have to stay longer on the key in order,
Like you have to take care of each release. When you have the pedal, of course you don't have to.
And in that regard, the pianoforte is also much different to the clavichord, where you want to have this finger touch relationship.
Yeah.
So it's also for me always difficult to come back. So I always wonder, like, for me it's, like I said, difficult from the clavichord coming to the pianoforte, but how do you adapt onto the instrument? What is actually the key, and like what's there to that drive that guides you when you are
when I'm preparing on a modern instrument?
Yeah, or vice versa. I mean, how do you do that?
Definitely it's harder to switch from the modern to this one, and then when you go back, because it's like the difference would be like as driving a car from the beginning of the 20th century compared to a car of today. Of course, a car of today with all the technology is much easier, like the aftertouch in the case of modern piano, the weight of the key, the size of the key, the response of the key, so everything makes it's just easier.
Yeah.
I will say that when I come here, like, so when I'm practicing at home on a modern instrument, the principle is to play with no pedal, like as I do here. So in a way I'm forced to like adopt kind of the same technique that I'm gonna use here.
But if you speak about it like this, you might get the impression that actually this instrument is I wouldn't say inferior, but so much more difficult to play. But what is then actually the advantage? What is the benefit of playing that music on this instrument?
Well, for the instrument itself, the quality of the tone. in my opinion. Like the projection of overtones, like the sound is richer.
Speed of the sound, maybe.
Yeah, like the clarity, the clarity of the articulation of all registers of piano. So like on modern piano, you don't have like it's easier to voice like individual like notes, but like the clarity, especially when you are playing on full power on this instrument, is much easier to keep here, like because it just allows that, especially in the bass register.
Yeah, you don't have to take care of the piano. Piano is actually meant for the music in terms of balance and transparency. Now it's interesting. It's more than interesting because you are now in the midst of this Beethoven project. I often think of you like the poor guy in his Beethoven journey. I mean, from the outside, of course, seeing that when people think about the project that we are doing now, you with Beethoven, it's unbelievable, of course, to have the opportunity to dive like a few years really deep into the music, and you also have the ability to study that music pretty quickly, I would say. Of course, you are a modern trained pianist, but still, like it's a kind of like a seminar that you take on Beethoven for a few years. But how do you regard that? I mean, your role in this project, the opportunity you have to record all of that and to stick to, not solely stick to Beethoven, but like have Beethoven in your backpack for 3 years and quite a lot.
It's a journey for me as well, because many works I didn't know either. So especially concerning the variations and the bagatelle. So if you just start like learning, especially in chronological order, you have the impression that you are walking like a parallel to what he did in his life. So you start from the first pieces and then you get slowly like to the latest sonatas, and like now we could say we are around the Wallenstein sonata, so like we can say that the first big half has been done, and then you are entering like in that period like where the music becomes anyways like in a way more complex, especially harmonically, polyphonically, and so you just you walk the journey, you walk the path.
Do you think if you will end this project that you will be a different musician?
Definitely, yeah. It's personally I don't know other musicians that have done that, so like a complete and in this way, so sonatas, variations and everything. So yeah, I think once you finish that, you are definitely a different musician.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because it's like a milestone in your work as a musician. So it's like a reference point. It becomes like you go to Chopin. Your Chopin box will be released, is released or will be produced now. You're gonna record a second volume probably in 27. If it's not Schubert, then it's Chopin. So, and I can imagine, but you correct me if I'm wrong, that if you go to Chopin now, after having gone through all of Beethoven, that Chopin becomes also a different composer, because
the cool thing about Beethoven is that you really get to experience the evolution of the style. That's the thing that probably you don't get as much in other composers, that I will say that.
You know that Czerny also mentions that.
Right, so
he said in order to understand Beethoven, he talks about the sonatas, you go from the first to the last one. Not in the opposite order.
It really looks like you are watching a film. There are more questions.
We're not.
We are starting with the questions.
People would think that you are not.
The questions are for me, it's not for you.
Maybe are for you. The first one there was for you. This one.
Yeah, of course, but we can answer that, right? So let's go. We can talk forever. One thing I really would like to mention. And by the way, Anya, you can also follow the chat on that computer. You don't have to run.
If they ask anything,
But you're working on Beethoven, Chopin for the project, for our authentic sound, and it's unbelievable because, I mean, when this piano was ordered, I thought I was the one that had to go through all the... And I have to be honest, if you... Of course, I was in conservatory, I played Chopin, I played, the regular stuff. but not in a way that you went to conservatory to really become a concert pianist. So I was really a Baroque player who extended his, to piano as a main instrument, and see who is there wanting some attention. But when I go through Beethoven's work, especially the later ones, it becomes technically much different from Mozart, Haydn, young Beethoven, and so you have to be careful with your technique before you know it. You play Beethoven and you go back to Bach, and it's a completely different world. So it's unbelievable that you joined the project, because otherwise I would have cloned myself with AI or something like that.
Yeah, the repertoire is quite extensive. So
now I could be working on the book together with Lorenz and Arthur and Peter, who translated so much while you were recording Beethoven, and got me also some time to go back to the clavichord and so on. So that's one of it. But you're not only playing 19th century repertoire. People might be surprised that you actually love 20th century repertoire as well.
Yeah, I still play.
So what is your main composer of the 20th century?
Well, Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev. That's I'm a lot into Russian music, but that's what I've always practiced in conservatory as well. Yeah. So basically, my repertoire has always started from Beethoven on. Yeah. Very rarely I've done stuff by Mozart, by Bach. I mean, I had to in conservatory, but it was never my focus.
If I say Beethoven wasn't your focus either, really, in the core part.
Yeah, it wasn't the core. Yeah,
it was Schumann.
But it was all the later music: Brahms, Schumann, Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev. So much later.
And we're not going to follow up on that, but. Prokofiev, we've been talking about that in regards to tempo. There's a lot there to restore as well. Maybe not definitely like going a whole bit.
Maybe no. I don't know if we didn't.
But like tempo consistency and then kind of going back to the origin of the composition, the score. There is a lot.
Yeah, there's certainly stuff to discover. Yeah.
So who knows that?
Let's not say for the people out there.
I mean, you hopefully outlive me, and so you have a long life. I mean, it's.
Well, but I have to behave.
with Prokofiev. Anyways, it's like being in a pioneer's world. Like everything you touch is kind of a premiere, is a kind of new experience, a kind of going back to the original source, score, and in a way, you could play in so many varieties. I mean, there is no one interpretation of what is an interpretation. There's no interpretation of just one interpretation of the score, but the tempo is, of course, your floor. Yeah. And on top of that, you build everything. But going back to the tempo floor, like the origin of the tempo, is something, and many people today seem not to understand that, is like the major part of reading the score that we take and we really rigidly reconstruct that. And from there, everything follows. But if you do that, of course, everything becomes new.
Yeah, and that's I would say the most difficult thing, because we are the first doing that, and so when I'm playing a sonata, I never heard that before in that way. So I'm the first one, and I should already make my mind up on what I am going to do with that, and I don't have there's basically nobody showing us what to do. So that is worth mentioning.
Yeah. So we go to the questions in a second. The last thing I wanted to say is maybe one composer that is not on your bucket list, not yet, but I'm sure it will come one day, is Franz Liszt. I'm just saying, not for, the Pèlerinage is unbelievable music, but we have, of course, the transcendental etudes, Alberto, and there is a beautiful era waiting for those etudes. That would be unbelievable in the Pisoni metronome marks.
Yeah.
That will be cool.
That and the sonata.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and then maybe some Brahms, but
those are in the list. But you cannot do everything at the same.
No. Okay, so we have some questions.
These are the first.
The first question. So Johan asked the pitch of the piano is high today. Yeah, it's almost 458. Yeah, and before people get a heart attack, if you don't know the story of the pitch. So pitches in Vienna were all over the place. They went from very low, almost 400 and lower, and they went up to 480 and more. Can you imagine that? Did you know?
480, yes.
480. I mean, there are instruments of the army preserved like wind instruments, and they sound at 485.
That's more than a half tone higher.
Even more than half the higher compared to this one.
Yeah.
And so today, of course, we think a lot in terms of standards, and the standard 430 or 50, 415 is 440, of course, is the standard pitch of the 19th century. For 435, then it was 440. Today is a little bit higher, but it all today is necessary because Baroque orchestra, period, you play period instruments. Those musicians go from one orchestra to the other. And in a way you could say it's a pity because the pitch of an instrument, and certainly with wind instruments, they sound differently as the different lengths. And for the pianos, we started with the piano also like 430, then the string tension was definitely not high enough. Yeah. Then we went to 440, and just the tuning was not stable. And talking with the builder, Joris Potflier, the scales of the strings or the sizes of the strings are actually noted down on the stem tuning block, in the original one that also Potflier owns. So the scale of the strings is exactly the same thing, and so that requires a higher pitch. Yeah. And so 455-ish is the normal
we are
pitch for this piano.
461.
Yeah.
So
and that goes. These pianos have a traveling pitch. They go up, they go down, and it's impossible if the piano is now 458. Imagine we would have to play with a wind instrument. Going back to 455 is just not possible.
Yeah.
You tune it lower and it goes up again, and then it's unstable all over the place. So you have to follow it. It takes you 1 to 2 weeks if you want to change the pitch, and then if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. But going back to 440 is not an option.
No.
So 455, by the way, is also the pitch that Beethoven's tuning fork had. That's still preserved in the British Museum in London. So Peter asks when he was in music school. That's a question for you. So in music school, Peter had to play from memory. Why do you read from notes, Alberto? And it's a good question actually, because we get that question a lot. It's like standard today on stage for pianists.
I hit my head really hard and I cannot memorize. No, people maybe don't know, but in conservatory I had to do that as well. So like my entire life I played by heart, but like especially concerning the project, like when you have to record so much repertoire in a short amount of time, you simply cannot memorize music that fast. Yeah. So like if I have to record a CD every month, because that's what we are doing, like almost one CD every month, like you don't have time to.
Yeah. But there's also something else that in Beethoven's time, and actually you could say up to, it changed with Clara Schumann, with Franz Liszt, and then after Chopin, after Schumann's death, they started to play from memory. But before it was not done. Yeah. Clara Schumann, when she started, I think even in her concert she played as a young girl in Vienna, she studied really hard. It's also described like that in some reviews. Mm-hmm. You can just imagine that. And she played from memory, and people were actually scandalized because that was a sign that you were improvising. Mm-hmm. Like just an anecdote, when Mozart played his famous, was it his violin sonata, or he composed a sonata for, I think, a violinist that traveled in Vienna. The same day he executed that, and he was paging through the score, and then afterwards the emperor asked for the score, and it was an empty book. Like there was absolutely not done. But there's also something else. If you really want to stick to, when you play from memory, that's at least my experience when I did it in conservatory. You are deviating from the score more and more. The music gets there. It's
you cannot remember everything. Yeah. But I also understand learning music by heart allows you to have more freedom to check what your hands are doing, and especially at the speeds that people play today. Of course, you need to look at your hands. Yeah. So
because that was also shocker in the 19th century. It was absolutely not done to look at your hands. Yeah. Go and search on the internet drawings of pictures, but before 1850 drawings of Chopin, Liszt, you will not find one picture where they watch their hands. Chopin even said at the end of his life, when he was in Scotland, he saw a lady play the piano, and he writes Yeah, she played incredibly many wrong notes in the bass, even when she was looking at her hands.
Yeah.
So try to do that. We unlearned that.
Yeah.
So, and C.P. Bach writes about that, but let's not go to in this rabbit hole because it's a very interesting topic. Could be the topic of the next book. Peter also asked Bach. That's a question from me. WTC book 1 is in whole beat. Not necessarily. No, it's not. So I have Czerny's metronomization, but you have to imagine Czerny edited those pieces for this instrument with a lot of legato, a lot of finger substitutions. It's a different world compared to the clavichord in 1730, 1740. And so I have Czerny's metronomization next to me when I practiced and recorded the first book, also the second book. And if you follow along with Czerny, you will see that there are pieces actually that are pretty close to Czerny, if not spot on, because many of his tempos are just flat out tempo ordinario. There were some things that changed later in the 18th century. The absolute admiration for the old church style, which is the long note notation, the alla breve, and so these tempos really slowed down till the half of what actually in the 18th century. That's at least what I think was currently practiced. And therefore Czerny is a source of inspiration for me, but not a guide that I really stick to that. We once in the future maybe record everything on this instrument, and then of course we have no excuse but to follow that. That would be actually a fantastic project to do that. Another question. Are trills and other techniques easier in whole beat versus modern metronome readings? That's a question for you. Well, Sibo is really sitting in the cables of the live stream. Now he's, Agnes trying to remove him from the internet cable, and he's looking very scared, like, what did I do wrong? First leg is pressed. Okay, Sibo, come here. Come here. Come. No, he's looking like I'm a bad dog because I did something. There he is. Ja, kom eens bij ons.
So, what was the question again? Trills?
If trills are easier in whole beat, because, and I can understand the question, I can elaborate a little bit on that. Your trills are shocking for many people today, because in that music we tend to play with Baroque trills, which are super fast today.
Yeah.
But Baroque trills, like C.P. Bach writes, you cannot play them fast enough. If they have to be played with a lot of freedom, it's another question. I heard a lecture by Miklos Spagni recently, and his was very convincing. They say trills in the Baroque time, which we played them à la française in the French manner, but in Germany it was completely different. And they're actually very rhythmically and described as such in the 19th century. Yeah. You follow a little bit the Glenn Gould technique, eh?
Yeah, but if you see the editions, we've seen those together of Czerny, Moschles, Bülow. The trills, when they are written out, like when they give the realization of the trills, it's always a rhythmical trill. Yeah. So 4 notes or like triplets, so they are always like that. I don't know if that reflects, but like even when you see other like piano treatises of the time, Hummel, Clementi, Czerny, Kramer, they all showed that way of playing the trills, and then you see later Moschles,
same thing, yeah,
and Bülow even later. So you think that might have been a way to, but it makes sense. On this piano, like if you try to play a free trill, after a while it just stops, because like when you play a trill like super fast, like you do it in that way because you have the aftertouch. So you don't, to play fast that trill, you don't have to release the entire key before playing that, but that's not possible here. So here you really have to let the key go up in order to play that again. So like the only way is to play like a slower trill but rhythmical. So like,
and especially the end of this sonata, this long trill, you have then a double trill. That's probably
the instrument here responds only to that. Like if you do a free trill, you can do it, but after a while it's not gonna work anymore.
Unless
like
you use a pedal.
You're gonna miss notes. Like sometimes some note will not sound.
Yeah.
So.
But honestly, I like it, and if if you are used to that, you start to like it very much, because if you play in whole beat, and the way you play is very metrically correct, like you feel this pulse so nicely when you play, you don't change it. This like what Schumann, like the intoxicating wave of music of virtuosos, like he wrote that. But once you are in this pulse, in this moment, the trills actually emphasize that in this way. So it was astonishing also to hear Glenn Gould, who is famous for doing that, like his trills, might be much more authentic, quote unquote, than we think. So it's very interesting to see some echoes of those old practices reflected in some players. And then Dimitris, he asked, is it possible on a modern piano to play like this? If you would be invited, I will rephrase the question, to Carnegie Hall, which what inevitably will happen, and they say like, listen, we have here 5,000 people in our room, this instrument, pianoforte, people would be surprised how soft it is compared to a modern piano. We were trying out with Lorenz, he was here, still here, the Erlkönig, and just with Arthur, and they both are tenor voices, so they sang together. The piano was completely gone. So, but if they then would ask, like, we have a beautiful Steinway, like 5 meters long, new version, would that be possible?
It depends what he means by, is it possible to play in whole beat on a modern instrument? Technically, yes.
But also with the same kind of spirit, no pedal, like to transform.
I mean, that's how I play at home, so it's absolutely digital, on a digital piano even. And
because that's what many people say. Okay, it's possible on the modern piano. You need a pedal because it's a like a thicker sound, and it's like more messy, actually less transparent. So, and you always said like, no, it's perfectly possible.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I understand that it's difficult because like giving up the pedal in this way. It takes time, like you need to learn a new way of playing. It's exactly like the tempo choice. But the question whether that is technically possible, of course, is yes.
You would reduce, of course, such an instrument to a smaller chamber music instrument. That's
but then of course the sound and the clarity, maybe it's not gonna be anyways the one of this instrument, but of course it's possible, and to me it works, but it's also a matter of developing the habit and also the taste for that, because at the beginning also for me it was like for a few months or for even 1 year when I started playing with little pedal. I mean, I didn't like the way I was, I didn't like the way it was sounding. And because I was still missing some things, technically speaking, but then once you do that, now it sounds like as if it's the most natural thing in the world, as if I've always done that. So
also interesting, Joseph Hoffmann even writes about that, and I think in 1910 or 14 in his book on piano playing. He had basically two schools in the 19th century. The Thalberg school, he introduced really the modern way of playing, of pedaling. Czerny describes that in the fourth volume of his pianoforte school, and it's super interesting to think about that. Like what Thalberg, like in the late 30s, actually introduced was this middle voice. He was famous for his three hands, so to say, middle voice in the pedal, and then chords and at the outsides of the piano. But we today would say like, but it's the most normal pedal use you can imagine. So the implication is that before it was not normal. It was absolutely an exception.
But I tell you more, like once you develop this way of playing, like the clarity that you have from not using the pedal, it's addictive.
That's exactly how Hoffmann describes it. You know that quote?
No, I didn't know, but like I understand, like when you develop that, like in this clarity, it's like the tempo. You get used to a tempo, you play much faster, and you say like I'm losing a lot. And same goes for the pedals. So they go together.
He says literally like when you practice without a pedal always. We say I can promise you when you're doing that, you will stick to playing without the pedal, because the tone loses so much quality when you touch the pedal.
I mean, we are talking about the classical works, and because like if you...
There is another question, we keep going.
I have time.
How do you establish tempo without hearing it? Now you check the metronome with the metronome.
Like now I was seeing that like the metronome was like showing like I will feel moving.
And in the future, when we would have concerts, you solo, or maybe we with the symphonies, who knows? It would be cool to have the real metronome on the piano because people would love it. Just have the ticks in the concert hall, it would be magical, I think. But of course, when you play the music a lot and you practice a lot, you get like an image of the music in your mind, and that is for all musicians, not only for us. Therefore, if I say changing tempo changes everything, that's true for every musician, regardless how he or she plays. And so the music has a certain color, a certain abstract feel, and you can even reconstruct a tempo based on a piece that you just imagine. And that's
and when you go back to that, even if you don't check, I mean, you are gonna be very close to it, or like if not spot on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so Alberto, again, thank you for
thank you
spending the evening here with us with Beethoven and with all of you. Thank you all. Thanks also to Anja for writing the questions down, and Stefan for hosting also the chat together with her. And of course, thanks to big thank you to all of you for being here, for backing the project, for supporting the project, for just hanging around. This project is important for all of us, for you, for me, because playing in a whole beat in this day, today, it's not something that many people still are applauding for. You might be surprised, but I don't think you are. So knowing that there is like a strong community that is just close to the project, to us, that means really a lot to us. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for being here, and I would say we definitely gonna repeat this live stream thing
for next
another
releases.
time. Yeah. Okay. Have a nice evening. Bye.